Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is James and welcome back to Soundline. Today's video we're talking about another Accuphase product. It's their latest Class A integrated amplifier, the E-650. And in typical fashion we will be starting by just going over the overview of the product, showing you the front, showing you the back, talk about the specifications of the unit and how they have improved over the last model. And then towards the end I will talk about how it sounds with respect to that model and what kind of room it works nicely with and what kind of speakers it can go with. And so on the left hand side we've got our lovely great big input selector, which is really solid and satisfying to use. You notice that compared to the E-650, like a lot of their newer amps, it now has that gloss gold trim ring around the input selector, as well as on the volume knob on the right hand side. That's a little trim piece that they started doing initially when they brought out the E-5000. Big solid power switch below it. If I release the front flap to reveal the controls, going from left to right, we have got our speaker A/B selector, bass and treble controls, a tone button to activate those bass and treble controls, an invert phase button, mono mode, compensate mode for night listening with a little bit of a bass boost, display on-off button. Going down the bottom we've got our DAC button, which allows us to switch between Toslink, coax and USB input if you're using the DAC 50 or DAC 60 optional input board. MMMC button, which allows you to simply change the gain on the phono board that you might have installed in this, the AD50 or AD60. Filter and MC load buttons, those are both brand new. The E-650 didn't have those. So your filter, that activates a 10 Hz subsonic filter, so that if you have powerful bassy speakers or a subwoofer in the system and you're listening to records, you can activate that 10 Hz subsonic filter and prevent bass feedback from accumulating in the system. And MC load, so now with the new AD60 in particular, you can now use this button to cycle through the impedance loads that you put on the cartridge, a nice little feature that they've added there. So now you don't have to completely uninstall the board, change the dip switches in and reinstall it. So that makes that a bit easier. Balance control left to right, main in for if you're using a separate preamplifier and turning this into a power amp, and recorder on, off and play if you happen to be using a tape recorder and you want to record some of your music that you might be streaming from Tidal or something like that onto tape. One other thing that's different about the front of it, the open button for the front flap is now a bit beefier than what it was on the 650, so it feels a bit more satisfying to use, where the one on the 650 was a bit pointier, so it just felt a bit sharper on the fingers. Attenuator button for quick reduction in volume. 1/4 inch stereo headphone socket. I say this with all Accuphase integrated amp videos, the headphone outputs on these amps are absolutely phenomenal. I'm not going to say they're as good as a dedicated headphone amplifier, but they are a better headphone stage than I have heard in any other brand of integrated amp or preamp. They put something actually half decent in these, so if you want to simply plug a nice pair of headphones into this, you can do that without feeling like you need to justify the extra expenditure on a headphone amp and cables and everything like that. You can use that one, definitely give it a go. And then our really nice big satisfying volume knob just above that. The headroom on these amplifiers is so high, like I basically never see anyone turn one of these volume knobs up above 4. Around about 3 is where most people listen to music relatively loud at comfortable volumes, but once you get up to 5, the speakers are really, really hammering, so you don't really need to use much of this volume control. It's because the amplifier can do it, it's got the power, it's got the headroom, but you basically never need to use it. Looking at the back of the E-650, it hasn't changed compared to the E-650. It has all the exact same features, but for those of you who are new or are not familiar with the E-650, I'm going to quickly rapid fire go through all of them now. So on the very left hand side you've got your option 1 and 2 input slots. That's where you would put your DAC card or phono card if you wanted to add one of those in. A lot of people ask me why the amps don't just come with those built in. At this level, it makes sense not just to throw something in simply to give it a feature that not everyone's going to use. The reality is not everyone listens to turntable and not everyone listens to digital. So why would they add features and therefore cost to a product that not everyone needs to actually pay for? Just take those two products, make them separate, and then if someone wants to use a turntable or something digital, they can pay for that ability, and it keeps the cost of these products down. means that the board that they install can actually be somewhat decent. They can, use a more premium product rather than something cheap that they can mass produce and put in absolutely everything. It also means by having those option slots that because these amps do last so long, like we're talking decades, any new technologies that come out in the future, and we don't know what they're going to be, Accuphase has a way and a known way of getting a new technology inserted into the back of their products. So if you have like a 30 or 40-year-old Accuphase with the same slots, there's a good chance that if some strange new technology arises, Accuphase will, if they want to, have a way of making a board that can utilize that technology in their really old amplifier. So there's a little bit of future-proofing gone into the thought process for that. Then going across the top, we've got all of our RCA connections. You've got 5 line level inputs, 2 of which have already been sort of pre-labeled for you, tuner and CD, and then 3 lines. You got your recorder play and record out sockets. You've got RCA level pre-out to go to a separate power amp, and RCA level main in, which is where your other preamp or processor would plug into. Below that, you've got your XLR balanced section, balanced CD input and balanced input, so you can plug a couple of different balanced inputs there. Balanced pre-out to go to another power amplifier, and then balanced main in. So again, if you were using this as a power amp, that's where you would plug your balanced connections from your separate preamp. Just to the left of those connections, you've also got a hot pin selector. The point of that is really, different brands, depending on where they're made and the region that they come from, will choose to make pin 2 the hot or signal pin, or they'll choose to use pin 3 as the hot or signal pin. This just gives you a bit more compatibility, so if you happen to have a product where it's pin 2 hot or pin 3 hot, you can make sure that you've got it set correctly on this device so that it's matching up at both ends. And then to the right of that, you've got your speaker A and speaker B outlets. Again, nice big chunky terminals. They're 5-way terminals, so you can put a banana or speaker wire or spade terminals in them. They're really, really solid. I've seen some people online complain about the fact that the spade connection has like a collar on it, so you can only put them in from certain angles. I mean, sure, yes, you're right, you can only put them in from certain angles, but it's never been a problem for us. Like, just comes out the bottom. We use banana connections for a lot of things, to be honest, anyway, but every time I've used spade connections on these amps, I've never had any issue trying to get them to go in a nice, tidy, comfortable way. Here are the specifications and the numbers for this product, the ones that I think matter. These specifications are with respect to the E-650, its predecessor model, so I'll be talking about kind of the improvement made on this one over that. So in terms of power, you've gone from 30 watts at 8 ohms up to 35 watts, and at 4 ohms you've gone from 60 watts up to 70 watts continuous. So that's 16% more power output RMS across the board. I mean, as you know with Accuphase, their power ratings are so conservative and so humble, is probably a good way of putting it. In terms of noise, you've got 11% less noise than what you had on the E-650, so you've gone from 102 dB signal to noise ratio up to 103 dB. The AAVA architecture, which is their patented and famous volume control that allows Accuphase amps to sound like full range, full bodied amplifiers even down at really low volume signals, has now added their ANCC technology that they recently came out with on their top of the line reference level preamplifier. ANCC stands for Accuphase Noise and Distortion Cancelling Circuit. The way this works is the circuit detects noise or distortion on the input side going to the preamp, isolates that noise, and then injects into the signal the out of phase equivalent of that noise, thereby cancelling the noise out and giving you a cleaner signal before it makes its way into the power amplifier. Really clever stuff. It obviously works because they put it on their top level preamp and they didn't then stop putting it in their product, so they must be really proud of how well it works. When I get to how it actually sounds later on, I'm sure that will be one of the reasons why I like the way it sounds. Okay, you've got a 25% increase in damping factor. This is a big one. So the E-650 was 800 damping factor. The E-700 is now 1000. So this is the same as what you get on the reference integrated amplifier, the E-800, and it's the same as what you get on their latest stereo Class A power amplifier, the A80. 1000 damping factor is really, really impressive. With respect to how it sounds to the E-650, I am very well experienced in how the E-650 sounds, having now owned one for a good 2 or 3 years. I can't remember how long I've had it now, but like I understand it. So I brought my E-650 in to do a comparison because I thought that was probably the best way to see what kind of improvements have been made in terms of the sound, you know, those new specifications, the new damping factor. It's funny because at first, it's not that I didn't think I heard a difference, but at first I thought I was listening to the same amplifier because the tone and the texture of everything, it's like the same flavor of amplifier, if that makes sense. The tone and the color were the exact same. But what I did start to notice the more and more I listened to it was how much lower the floor noise was. So it sounded like a bigger amplifier with more dynamic range and more expression. But what I did notice was that we've had this running in over the past week, trying to get as many hours on it as we possibly can. And we've been running it in on some Sonus Faber Homage Amati G5s. I was really impressed with how well this E700 was able to drive those quite massive speakers. Normally we wouldn't pair an amplifier this small with those speakers. Normally we'd use something like a pre-power or a much more powerful Class AB amplifier to get those guys up and running. But this E700 is no slouch. It got them going really well. It's been sounding like a really powerful system. I don't think my E650 could drive those. I think it would sound just kind of tired and underpowered. So I think that comes down to that big increase in the damping factor. The fact that you've gone from 800 up to 1000 means now that this amplifier can cope with big speakers and big rooms far better than what the E650 can. And yes, as I say, there's like an improvement in the floor noise and the clarity across the system. It's not massive, but it's not unnoticeable. It's decent improvement, what you want for a new amplifier. But the improvement, the way it's able to drive these great big speakers in this fairly large room, that's the thing that impressed me the most. If you have any questions about the product, put them down in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them because we do have it in the shop now, so I'll be listening to it as much as I possibly can and trying not to convince myself that I need to sell my E650 and buy one of these. I'll catch you in the next video. Ka kite anō.